Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is TheSparrowsJourney, and this is Battlefield 1, developed by DICE and published by Electronic Arts. Are we ever gonna see this franchise coming back to its glorious days or not? That's the question I'm gonna try to answer with this review-ish kind of video. It's important to clarify that I had no review access to the game, so this video will be based, the opinions on it will be based only on the closed beta that happened a while ago with Battlefield 1, and also more recently upon the trial access if you bought the Origin access on PC or Electronic Arts access for Xbox. The Origin access, which would give you a trial access of Battlefield 1 for 10 hours, cost me €4, which would also give you access to other games in the Origin platform. €4 for 10 hours of gameplay in this game, with 2 chapters available for the single player. Took me around 2 hours to finish in the hard difficulty, and also the multiplayer. Is it a bad deal? €4, or about $5 in the US currency, gives you about, within 10 hours, 40 cents for each hour of entertainment. Now, if you really enjoyed Battlefield 1, this is a pretty goddamn good value. And not to mention that, most demos come out free. You don't pay anything for them, but they usually don't last 10 hours either. But this is clearly just a marketing move, really, to get people to use their Origin app. There's a reason why Battlefield is not being launched on Steam. With this Origin access, you get a lot of other stuff too. You can get to play a lot of games for free. Games like, decent games like Dead Space 2, Dead Space 3. The catch is, you can only play them for free as long as you are subscribed to Origin Access. The moment that your subscription expires, you can no longer play those games for free unless you have bought them. In the end, you are playing 10 hours in advance. Your progression will continue if you pre-order Battlefield 1. Origin Access also gives you a discount on all the games that you buy from that point on. Battlefield 1, instead of costing €60 or something like $62, will now cost something like €54, which is a €6 discount. In the end, this is just a €2 discount if you buy the normal edition. Let's talk about the options you have to buy the game. You have 3 different editions, as in with every Electronic Arts game. You have the normal edition, which costs €60, and I'm not going to consider Origin Access right now or its discount. You have the Deluxe Edition, which will give you access to the game on the 18th of October, 3 days before the game is officially launched, and also 5 battle packs. Battle packs in the game are loot boxes that you pick up along the way. See it as this kind of Overwatch loot crates, but only now for weapon skins instead of hero skins. There's no way, in my mind, that Electronic Arts is not picking this up to make a little bit more cash. Now, one thing must be said, you can also buy these battle packs with in-game currency, which they call, if I'm not mistaken, scraps. As long as it is just skins, nothing really that give you an advantage in-game, Battlefront, I'll be okay with that. Lastly, you have the Ultimate Edition, which costs $130. It's not in my best judgment to spend so much money in just one game for 14 battle packs, and also all the DLCs that come after that. These 14 battle packs, it's sort of a way for them to have you subscribe to the game, make you come back to the game if you ever decide to quit it for a while, because these battle packs will be delivered one each month. Yes, you will not get these battle packs all at once you start playing the game. Ultimately, I would not buy this Ultimate Edition. Did you see what I did there? Now, I was always a very big fan of Battlefield. While people were playing Call of Duty, I was much more of a fan of Battlefield. They are, in my mind, different games. Unfortunately, Battlefield more and more swayed away from its own niche, which was a big deal breaker for me. I stopped playing Battlefield entirely because of that. We are gonna analyze Battlefield 1 for its single player first, and then for its multiplayer secondly. Battlefield single player was never something that people bought the game for. With that said, it doesn't mean that some people don't care about it. Some people will want to play a good single player campaign out of a $60 value game. It's unfair to judge the single player campaign of the game without, being able to play it all. I only played the trial so far, and that only gives you access to 2 chapters. A prologue, a very small prologue with about 15 minutes of gameplay, and about 1 hour and 40 minutes on the second chapter. The game starts out really good in terms of a single player campaign per se. It's a different take playing a game about war. Then later on, it goes down the drain for me personally. It comes closer and closer to what the single-player main campaign was in previous Battlefield games, having to conquest certain points in the map, having to blow up certain points in the map. The missions end up feeling too artificial, and there doesn't seem to have any writing involved. Chapters end too fast, and it doesn't give you enough time to care much about the characters. And I'm kind of contradicting myself over here because I really loved how you change from soldier to soldier, from story to story, which breaks that effect of a very strong hero in the war, in the main campaign, where you never die. And Edwards, even though he doesn't end up dying, he ends up losing his tank, which is a very personal side of it. The whole game happens in the World War I, which is different from the previous Battlefield games, which kind of tries to prove some people wrong, saying that the World War I didn't really have much story or content to base the game on. And Battlefield 1 does it differently from other games. You're not playing as a superhero man, you're not playing as a guy that survives a whole war. No, you play as sometimes a guy on foot, you play as a tank guy driving a tank, you play as a pilot flying a plane. You are in the war, you feel the war. It's a very emotional experience, which delivers a message. And by the way, you can play as a pigeon.
Edwards! Release the pigeon! That is an order, son! Do you understand me?
Now, the second chapter is a little bit longer than the first one. You play as Edwards, which is the driver of Bessie, or Bess, Black Bess, the tank that you will drive. It gives you this sort of Fury feeling if you've watched that movie. The single-player campaign turns out to be this sort of multiplayer-ish kind of tutorial, and I would like to mention the third mission, I think it's the third mission of the second chapter, which forces you to learn how to prone and how important prone is in the game. And that mission is all about getting stealthy and getting closer to tanks and how to destroy them with dynamite, stuff like that. And the game doesn't allow you to shoot unless you are proning. I had close encounters with soldiers that I could not kill just because I couldn't kill them unless I was prone. And it makes absolutely no sense to prone on their feet just to shoot them with a sniper. Now, I do understand that that mission was all about shooting them from a distance with a sniper, but you had close encounters whether you wanted or not, because soldiers would show up in waves, and by the point you were near the bunkers, the soldiers caught on you in melee. Not to mention there was a tank, crucial apparently, I had to destroy it, crucial to the mission's continuation, and it bugged on a wall. Couldn't get out of there, it was stuck, and for 5 to 10 minutes I wondered what the hell I had to do, because there was really no objective other than destroying everything I could see.
Oh, hell no!
Soldiers seem to have like this impressive field of view where you are just discovered once you come very close to him, even though you are stealthing, even though you are crouching and making no noise whatsoever. Battlefield is not really about stealth and being stealthy. It's not a stealth game, obviously, it's a war game, and I don't think it was a good idea to have a mission all about stealth when the stealth mechanic is not really working that greatly. I mean, even the fact that you shoot someone with a silent sniper rifle makes you visible to everyone. On that moment, the soldier sounds the alarm and every single guard knows from that point on where you are at.
What the?
I'm so glad that Battlefield 1 is not about the single player but rather the multiplayer, because the bots do such a bad job at fighting you. I had times where I was driving my tank going through their opposite team's campments, and their soldiers behaved in such a suiciding way that they just ran towards the tank and shot it with a rifle repeatedly. Hard is the highest difficulty in the game currently. Now, was it actually hard? Did it make my life difficult? Yes, it did, but only because of how many enemies were thrown at me throughout the whole campaign. The game doesn't make it itself hard by improving the enemy's AI or giving the soldiers better equipment or something like that. It does it in a very lazy way, which is basically increasing the number of enemies thrown at you and most likely their HP. Visually, the game looks absolutely stunning, but it seems to suffer from that syndrome that most games nowadays suffer from, which is overall the game looks absolutely great, but when you look specifically to something very closely, it ends up looking really bad. But overall, it looks really good. There's a lot of attention to detail, the smoke, the fire, even the grass. It looks amazing. Battlefield 1 uses once again the Frostbite engine, which delivers a great job in map destruction, even though at times it reveals itself some weaknesses. I tried to shoot a soldier through a window with a sniper rifle, and I ended up destroying the window without even hitting the guy. The tank movement, it's something unbelievably good to look at. When you go on the mud, when you go through trenches, it's one of the best feelings in the game so far for me. There are a lot of options in the video tab. Battlefield 1 actually puts in motion blur as in a bar. Motion blur in games was always something that I really didn't want to exist, but what Battlefield 1 does really well is allowing you to just add something like 20 or 30% motion blur, or even 100% if you really like that effect. Now I have a 1080, which is a pretty good graphics card, and I play on 1440p. The game runs perfectly well. I had 120 frames per second, if not more at times, always on ultra settings. Cinematics are pretty impressive as well, even though they are not Mafia 3 level of cinematics. I guess Mafia 3 from now on will be this kind of standard, high standard for cinematics. And the sound design, we're talking about DICE over here. It's out of this world. It's one of the best sound designs I've ever heard. It's one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard, because you know what? The main theme is back. So good to listen to. You can hear men screaming, you can hear the bullets or the shells of the bullets coming down on the floor, hitting the floor. You can hear the tanks just exploding stuff in the distance. You can hear, for instance, when you shoot a balloon and you explode it, you don't hear the sound right away. You hear it a couple seconds after, like it happens in reality. And in a war game, that truly is significant. So I'm gonna wrap things up with what I think about the multiplayer. They have changed the Battlefield 1 multiplayer class system. Now you have 4 main classes: Assault, Medic, Support, and Scout. You also have side classes: Pilot, Tanker, Horseman, and finally you have 3 elite classes, which are the Flamethrower, the Sentry, and the Tank Hunter. Their names are pretty self-explanatory. We didn't need any elite classes. We didn't need something like the Pilot, the Tanker, or the Horseman. It makes the class system a little bit more confusing, a little bit more complex, and they should have most likely simplified this much better. If you haven't noticed by now, the Engineer is gone. Engineer was focused on tanks, how to destroy them, how to repair them. Now the mission of the Engineer has been split into 2 classes: the Assault and the Support class. The Support class now not only delivers ammo for the people that need it, but also are the ones responsible for repairing the tanks. The Assault class took the other features of the Engineer. He is the one now focused on anti-tank mechanics. He is the one that can destroy tanks more efficiently. And I'm not quite a big fan of this change. Whenever I play Battlefield, I want to play as someone that drives tanks, as someone who also knows how to destroy tanks. The Engineer class was spot on for me. So this forces me, whenever I don't have a tank available to spawn with, to go with an Assault so that I can destroy other people's tanks. But at the same time, I'm not able to drive a tank properly as an Assault class because I don't have the ability to repair it. Now, what I think it becomes confusing is when you have the Pilot, the Tanker, and the Horseman. Why would you have a Tanker? The explanation is that now vehicles are much harder to get, that they felt there was a need for a special kind of class only for the tanks to drive tanks, and all of the others, Assault, Medic, Scout, and Support, are just the infantry around in the map. In fact, you cannot spawn as a Tanker, Pilot, or Horseman without having the vehicle that they can ride on. Let's talk now about the modes of the game. You currently have 6. In the future, we will eventually have 7. So you now have the Conquest mode, which is pretty similar to what you had before in previous Battlefield games, but now you have the Behemoth, which we will talk in a little bit. You have the Domination mode, which is pretty much Conquest, but without the Behemoth and without the vehicles. You have the rush mode, you have the war pigeons mode, you have the team deathmatch, and the operations mode. Notably, in previous Battlefield games, the conquest mode was my favorite, but they have completely destroyed the fun in it for me because of this new thing they came up with, which is the behemoth. The behemoth is a train, a super powerful train, and you get it by controlling a specific station in the map. It isn't fun at all being destroyed by something miles away from you, pretty much like the elite classes. That's what it feels like to me. It's not fair. It makes the game unbalanced. It makes things more dynamic, yes, but it makes it so much that it peaks sometimes into points of unfairness to the team that doesn't have it. Conquest would be my favorite if it wasn't for this train called Behemoth. Now my new favorite is gonna be Rush, just because I can play with vehicles there and not have this Behemoth thing. I didn't play War Pigeons because there was really no chance. I really wanted to experiment with all modes, but the truth is people were always playing either Conquest, Domination, Rush, or Team Deathmatch. War Pigeons was not really accessible. Operations is sort of a mix between Conquest and Rush without the Behemoth, fortunately. It's a massive scale war, and it's something that I was not able, once again, I was not able to play it because apparently not enough people playing it. When it comes to maps, you now have 9 different maps, and all of them look so beautiful. I didn't have enough time to play them all, but overall I guess they were kind of fair, and the browser is back. You know, not only have quick match, you can choose whatever mode you want to play specifically, but you can also check the browser, and I remember for some reason they have disappeared with the browser. Now it's back, and that's very good news. No innovation. Now this can be seen as a pro if you actually enjoy Battlefield for what it is, and if you don't want it to change it at all. Now, for the ones that want innovation, is Battlefield 1 okay? Not quite. The only 2 real innovations I see with the game is the new operations mode, which seems to be really good, and also the Behemoth in the conquest mode. Now, the Behemoth, as we've talked, to me personally, is a bad innovation. The operations still needs some testing to prove itself. One has to argue, do you really want this system and this franchise to innovate, or do you want to keep it the same? You know, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. That's what people usually say. For the multiplayer, I do not understand the choice of having a female announcer. And no, I'm not being sexist. It could totally be a female announcer, but it just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the theme, it doesn't fit the game, it doesn't fit even the era of the game. It would have been much better to have someone saying something like, "Oh, we lost Freddy. We need to get that back immediately." Obviously, I don't want it to be this comedic. I'm not a voice acting guy. I don't know how to do it, but you get my idea. This doesn't sound right for a Battlefield game. It sounds like it's a girl behind you massaging your back.
We have armed objective Butter. The enemy has armed objective Apples. We have taken objective Freddy. We have lost objective George. Halfway there, the enemy has the upper hand.
It blows my mind how in Battlefield, a game that is all about vehicles, once again, at least personally, it's so hard to get a tank. They have done Battlefield 1 in a way that it's not all about vehicles anymore. Well, guess what? You have 2 mechs for each team in every single multiplayer map. It not only became a huge hassle to get a tank and drive it, but also to destroy one. Destroying tanks on foot is nearly impossible in maps where you don't have any cover whatsoever. In maps like in the desert, you have no chance to come close to a tank and destroy it with either a mine, with either dynamite, which is not sticky. Most of the times when you drop the dynamite, the tank just moves away. You have to blow it up so fast to get the tank that you end up blowing up yourself. Now, I do realize you have different kinds of anti-tank weapons that will come further down the line, but until you reach those, it is a nightmare bringing down a tank. And a good tank driver can change the course of the war. I don't quite understand their decision to reduce the number of tanks per each map. Of course, more tanks would make a little bit more unfair for the infantry, but Battlefield is all about vehicles. It's all about driving epic tanks or epic planes. It's so hard to take a tank down on foot if you are by yourself, that the only other single way to get a tank down is either one of the artillery or with another tank on the opposite team. And guess what? Because there's such a low number of tanks in the game available for each team, they never really meet each other, reducing the chances of one tank being destroyed and giving someone else a chance to drive a tank. They made it so that one of the things that I like to do the most in the game became a huge, stressful, annoying thing. Lastly, I would like to say that there are a lot of things that came from Battlefront, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. Battlefield 1 is definitely not Battlefront, and it shouldn't feel like that. But things like, I'm gonna give you a few examples. How you spawn directly into a vehicle when you choose to drive one. doesn't feel great. Back in the days in old Battlefield games, you would spawn with your own class and you would get into a specific tank if you were the first one to run at it. Is that something that people nowadays cannot really even handle? Has the gaming scene changed so much that running 10 seconds towards a tank is too much to handle? Battlefield 1 seems to be the one that is gonna get me back to the series, but it has its own problems. It's not without its own flaws, and there are a lot of them they should fix. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a grand day. My name has been TheSparrowsJourney. This was my first stick into Battlefield 1. I will most likely make another video or two about Battlefield 1 when the game comes out, so that I can give you my full thoughts on it. I'll see you on the next one. Have a great time. Bye bye.